They betrayed him for being weak, but he climbed a tower and became a god in an unknown world. This world housed the Tower of God, a monumental structure that granted any wish, fame, riches, power, or even godhood. However, to achieve these desires, one had to ascend the tower, overcoming its challenges to reach the top. At the base of this tower, in a dark and lonely cave, lived a boy known as the 25th Bam. Bam had no memory of his life before waking up in the cave. Days passed, and his sole desire was to escape. He tirelessly used rocks to break through the cave's ceiling. Living in darkness grew unbearable, and he longed to see the light. Bam's perseverance paid off when he finally made a hole in the cave's roof, allowing light to pour in. It was through this hole that Bam first saw a girl named Rachel. Hearing Bam's efforts, Rachel had helped break the roof with a rock. She climbed into the cave, and she and Bam quickly became friends. Their bond grew strong, as Rachel was the first person Bam had seen since waking up. She taught Bam many things he had forgotten and spoke of the stars that shone at the top of the tower. Rachel dreamed of seeing these stars and aspired to climb the tower to fulfill her dream. However, Bam, who only knew the cave and his friend Rachel, wanted her to stay with him forever. One fateful day, Rachel decided to leave and run towards the tower's entrance, determined to pursue her dream. Bam ran after her, desperately trying to stop her from leaving. He caught up to her and asked where she was going. Rachel apologized, explaining that she had to leave him to climb the tower. In that moment, Rachel was enveloped in light and started disappearing. Simultaneously, the tower's doors swung open, and a massive, powerful hand extended down towards Bam. Driven by his obsession with Rachel, Bam somehow managed to enter the tower as well. He awoke in a grand corridor and met the tower's guardian, Head-On. Head-On seemed pleased with Bam's arrival. Bam was surprised that Head-On knew his name, thinking perhaps Rachel had told him. Bam urgently asked where Rachel was, but Head-On interrupted, saying all the answers he sought lay at the top of the tower. Head-On then asked if Bam would take the necessary test to climb the tower and find what he was searching for. Determined to find Rachel and bring her back, Bam agreed. Head-On then altered the room and revealed a cage behind Bam. He explained the rules. To pass the test, Bam had to enter the cage, break a large ball inside it, and avoid the attacks of an armored steel eel. If he succeeded, he would move on to the next floor of the tower to continue his search. Head-On warned Bam that the test was extremely difficult and that he could withdraw now. The tower was dangerous, and someone as weak as Bam could lose their life attempting it. However, Bam ignored Head-On's words and rushed toward the cage. Just as he was about to enter, a girl stopped him by kicking him in the face. The girl, named Yuri, and a boy named Evan, started speaking in a strange language that Bam couldn't understand. Evan had a special ball called a pocket that translated their words for Bam. They revealed that Bam was an irregular, meaning he entered the tower on his own, unlike regular entrants. Bam was on this journey to find his friend Rachel, which is why he ended up in the tower. Head-On recognized Yuri as a princess of Zahard. She introduced herself and Evan. Head-On warned Yuri that helping Bam could lead to trouble with Zahard, the tower's ruler. Yuri thought the test was too difficult for a newcomer, but Head-On insisted that Bam, being an irregular, was different. Yuri, thinking Bam was harmless, agreed to help him. She lent him a special sword called the Black March, part of a legendary set of swords in the tower. Evan was hesitant, as only princesses were supposed to use it. However, Yuri, moved by Bam's determination and his pretty face, handed him the Black March. Bam took the sword and entered the cage. The giant eel attacked him, and Bam struggled to fight it off. The eel swallowed him, but Bam injured it from the inside and managed to escape. Focusing on the ball, Bam kept trying to break it. The eel attacked again, and Evan shouted for Bam to ask the Black March for help. Yuri doubted the sword would listen, but Bam spoke to it, and the sword's spirit responded, agreeing to help because Bam was cute. With the Black March's power, Bam defeated the eel, broke the sphere, and moved to the next floor. Yuri tried to follow, but head-on stopped her and killed the eel with his staff. On the second floor, Bam found himself in the midst of a battle with around 400 people. This floor was much livelier than the dark and eerie previous one. A voice from a floating black cube, called a lighthouse, announced that they had to fight until only 200 were left to move on. The test began, and Bam used his sword to defend himself. He soon faced a large, multi-eyed creature. In trouble, he was saved by two new people, Kun Aguero Ognis and Rak Wraithrazer. Rak wanted to hunt Bam, seeing him as prey, while Kun was curious about the Black March. Rak pointed his lance at Bam's head, and Kun teased him, asking if Rak was Bam's pet. Bam, in defense, clarified that Rak was not his pet, as he was trying to attack him. Rak got mad and stomped his feet, introducing himself as Rak Wraithrazer and demanding Kun call him that. Kun, intrigued by the Black March's mark, decided to help Bam. He made Rak fall and ran away with Bam. Rak got up, calling them turtles, and searched for them. Kun and Bam hid behind a multi-eyed creature. Kun introduced himself, shook Bam's hand, and asked where he got the Black March. Bam explained that Yuri had lent it to him to find someone. Kun found this interesting and asked Bam to join him. Bam agreed, as Kun was the only person who hadn't tried to attack him. Meanwhile, a battle was unfolding between a green reptilian girl named Anik, wielding a whip-like weapon called the Green April, and a guy named Hats, who fought with two katanas. The Green April had a red mark similar to the Black March, both part of the legendary 13-month series. This marked Anik as a princess of Zahard, like Yuri. While Anik and Hats fought, Bam and Kun counted the remaining participants, which were 268. They focused on hiding and waiting. Kun asked Bam if he had ever fought anyone, but Bam admitted he hadn't and could only remember what Rachel had taught him. Kun asked if Rachel was his girlfriend, but Bam said she wasn't. He felt he belonged to Rachel and needed to climb the tower to find her. Kun said Rachel was like his rule, a concept Bam didn't understand. They shook hands, becoming allies, and Bam felt comforted having someone on his side. The fight between Anik and Hats ended in a tie, both proving to be very strong. They then met a guy named Shibisu and decided to team up. Kun advised Bam that he shouldn't be bound by the tower's rules but should make his own. He also believed that if a princess of Zahard like Yuri was interested in Bam, then he was worth believing in. Suddenly, Rak appeared and tried to attack them, but the time was up, and the 200 participants for the next phase had already been chosen. The announcer warned that any attacks after the announcement would lead to disqualification. They were given 5 minutes to form teams of 3, or they would be disqualified. Bam and Kun tried to team up with Rak, but he refused, wanting to chase them as his prey. Kun threatened to find another ally if Rak didn't join them. Kun even prepared to fight Rak, taking a knife from his briefcase. But Bam intervened, choosing to face Rak unarmed. This gesture made Rak pause. Kun attempted to convince Rak to ally with him, but Rak struck Kun with his lance, showing disinterest. As time ran out, Kun climbed up and grabbed Rak's neck, while Bam picked up his sword and dodged one of Rak's attacks. They were then transported to the 3rd floor. Despite still wanting to fight, Bam refused to fight his new teammate. Kun told Rak that it was dangerous for Bam to use the sword as many would want to hunt him for it. 2 participants started fighting, but an examiner named Luro Aro stopped them. Examiners were incredibly strong, having climbed the tower before. Luro Aro stated that there were too many regulars and some needed to be eliminated. He used Shinsu to create a massive water barrier, which the participants had to pass through to move on. Kun doubted Bam's ability to pass, but Bam surprised everyone by standing firm against the water. Luro Aro, impressed, declared Bam had already passed the test. Luro Aro then proposed a bet with Bam on who would pass the barrier first, with the loser answering a question from the winner. Bam wanted to know about Rachel. Both chose Anik as their champion, and she successfully crossed the barrier, followed by her partner Hats. Their other partner, Shibisu, struggled. Luro Aro called the bet a tie, which was impressive, as he was a ranker. Loro Aro agreed to answer Bam's question but didn't know about a girl with freckles named Rachel. Bam then asked about irregulars. Loro Aro explained they were individuals who didn't follow the tower's rules and that the tower had 3 parts. It seemed that Bam and Rachel didn't come from any of these parts. A frustrated participant refused to be disqualified by a water barrier, so Loro Aro used Shinsu to silence him and force him to quit. Loro Aro returned, and the other participants managed to pass the test. They moved on to the red door test on the 3rd floor. Before the test began, Kun reflected on his past, remembering how he was betrayed and exiled for trusting someone. He recalled his mother's words about not trusting anyone as he gazed at the sky. Bam approached, asking if the ceiling was too bright, but Kun explained it was the sky, which Bam had never seen before. Surprised, Bam asked if stars were visible at night. Kun explained that stars were just a legend, as the sky was created by Shinsu and wasn't real. This worried Bam, thinking about why Rachel would climb the tower without him. As the test started, teams of regulars entered a corridor to face the red door tests. The next team went in, and they heard screams. Bam, Kun, and Rak waited for their turn. A balloon-like guy approached them, claiming to have a clue about the test. Bam asked what it was, and the guy mentioned that the groups who passed in less than 5 minutes didn't scream, suggesting a time limit. Kun was skeptical and questioned why he would share this with strangers. The guy then talked about Kun's past and how he was abandoned by his family. This angered Kun, who drew his knife. Bam tried to stop him, and Rak stood ready to fight. Kun backed away to avoid a fight in the waiting room. It was their turn to proceed with the test. They entered a room with a giant clock, and red doors appeared. A guy named Yuga explained the test. They had to choose the correct door to pass, but they could only choose one and had 10 minutes. Yuga gave no hints. Kun analyzed the situation, thinking about which door to choose. Rak ran around chaotically, and Bam tried to calm him. Kun struggled to come up with a solution, haunted by his mother's warning about not trusting anyone. He tried to disregard the clue from the balloon guy, recalling how a girl named Maria had betrayed him when she became a princess of Zahard. With 4 minutes left, Kun was still deliberating. Just before the 5-minute mark, Rak, driven by instinct, kicked open a door, and they passed the test. Yuga congratulated them, explaining they just had to open any door within 5 minutes to pass. Yuga knew about Kun's past and mentioned how Maria's betrayal had traumatized him, making him someone who never made decisions unless he was absolutely sure. He said Kun needed companions who could make instinctive decisions like Rak and protect those with eyes that don't know doubt, referring to Bam. Yuga left without further explanation, wishing them farewell and hinting that he knew what was in Kun's briefcase. Afterward, other groups also passed the test, including one with a guy who was always sleeping named Loroy and another with Anik. Bam tried to ask Kun about Maria, but Kun didn't want to discuss it. On the lower floors, tests were still ongoing. On the 2nd floor, there was a group of hooded individuals, one of whom resembled Rachel. They defeated everyone who participated in the tests, which was against the rules. Quant, the examiner in charge, informed Yuhan about the group that had passed both tests. Yuhan agreed to help and contacted Loro Aro to resolve the matter. Bam went to get a drink for Rak but realized he didn't have money. Shibisu approached and bought him the drink, introducing himself and his team, consisting of Anik and Hats. Bam thanked Shibisu and introduced himself as well. Shibisu felt a connection with Bam and wanted to make it to the final together as acquaintances. Loro Aro then informed them about an extra test, the crown game, which wasn't mandatory, but most participants chose to participate. In this game, teams fought to reach the throne, and one member had to wear the crown while their teammates protected the crown wearer from other groups. Loro Aro mentioned that the hooded individuals would participate as well. Shibisu's group decided to participate first, with Anik using her weapon, the Green April, to fight the other group. She defeated her opponents and put on the crown, ensuring no one could take it. Bam saw Rachel among the hooded individuals in the distance. Bam was convinced that he saw Rachel and called out to her. However, The girl from the hooded group, who might have been Rachel, didn't respond and remained still. Bam started to doubt himself, thinking he might be wrong because if it was Rachel, she would have answered. So, he refocused on the game. Loro mentioned that Shibisu's group now had the crown and began a countdown for the next group to challenge them. Rak wanted to go next, but Kun advised waiting to make the best move. The countdown ended, and 2 more groups entered, a random group and Loro's group. Hats and Shibisu split up to protect Anik and the crown. Hats handled the random group while Shibisu fought Loro's team. Loroi, who was usually asleep, woke up and attacked Anik using Shinsu, making her angry. Anik dodged the attacks and used her green April to counter Loro's group, causing the Black March to react strangely. Anik noticed the Black March's influence and stopped her attack, leading Loro's group to leave the game. Anik destroyed their cell and confronted Bam, demanding the Black March. Bam refused, and Anik tried to take it by force but was stopped by Loro, who disqualified her for leaving the throne. Anik proposed a bet to Bam. If he won the test, she would give him her sword, and if she won, she would take the Black March. Bam reluctantly accepted, and the test resumed. The test continued with more groups entering to fight. Kun managed to take the crown and hid it in his briefcase. He challenged the other groups to try and take it from him, using his briefcase to defend himself. After a series of dodges, Kun revealed a fake crown and placed the real one on Bam's head, who sat on the throne. At that moment, the hooded group, led by Rachel, decided to take action. Rachel revealed her face, and her teammate, Indorsi, another princess of Zahard, prepared to eliminate all the participants. The battle and the test continued, with Kun revealing his clever plan to distract the other groups while getting the real crown to Bam. He showed his ability to copy objects using his briefcase. When 3 groups decided to team up and attack Kun, they were swiftly stopped by Rak. After a bit of rest, the 4th round began with more groups entering. 2 groups agreed to ally, but the 3rd one chose to attack the 2 groups, defeating them all. Kun revealed that the 3rd group, who didn't ally with the 2 groups, was their secret ally from a previous test, and he had planned this with them. Bam's group saw their allies return to the cell but realized they got disqualified for helping them. Kun explained that they had to win the bet with Anik and explore the tower together. The final round started with the 4 remaining groups. A woman with a multi-eyed mask quickly defeated the other groups, leaving only Bam's group, the hooded group, and her own. She went straight for Bam but was stopped by Rak. She then charged at Bam after managing to get Rak out of the way, but Bam was defended by Indorsi from the hooded group. In the middle of the battle, Bam recognized Rachel's voice but couldn't see her face due to the hood covering it. Rak asked Kun if he had bribed the hooded group, but Kun explained that they were from a different testing floor and seemed uninterested in the crown. Kun and Rak defeated the other members of the masked woman's group. During the battle, the masked woman attacked Rachel, causing her hood to fall and revealing her face. Bam rushed to protect Rachel but was struck on the head and fell to the ground. Determined to protect Rachel, Bam subconsciously activated his Shinsu and seriously injured the masked woman, whose name was Warayan. Bam then tried to deliver the final blow with the Black March, but it stopped him by freezing time and manifested in its female form. The Black March told Bam to calm down and enjoy his reunion with Rachel, kissing him on the cheek and causing him to faint. Meanwhile, Yuri was desperately searching for a way to reach Bam on the testing floor. Evan commented on Yuri's urgency, and they were interrupted by a big man named Curtin, who mentioned a safe place for advancing. Yuri agreed they should move, and Curtin wondered if Bam, the rookie, was that important. Yuri only said that when Curtin saw Bam, he'd understand, as the boy possessed tremendous power. Back on the testing floor, Bam was still unconscious on a stretcher, being taken care of by Loro. Loro approached Yuhan to explain what had happened during the test. The crown game had ended in chaos, with the crown destroyed by Bam's Shinsu. Loro asked Yuhan why he had organized the game. Yuhan explained it was due to a mistake made by Quent, and his goal was to help the hooded group advance without Evankel noticing. Loro noted that the hooded group had completely ignored the crown and suspected that one of the girls in that group seemed to know one of the examiners, which went against Hun's rules. Yuhan reminded Loro that they conducted tests to expel dangerous ideas or powers from the tower. He asked if they had found anyone like that, and Loro replied that they hadn't. Yuhan believed that organizing the crown game was worth it. Loro decided to leave, but before he did, he asked Yuhan about controlling Shinsu without making a contract with an administrator. Yuhan admitted it went against the tower's laws, but mentioned an irregular named Yurik Mizuno who could do it. As Loro walked down a corridor later, he realized that Yuhan had avoided the question because it seemed that Bam didn't control Shinsu. He was Shinsu itself, which posed a clear danger to the tower. Back in his room, Bam was still asleep. Kun talked to him, urging him to wake up soon as there was another test the next day, and Bam would be disqualified if he didn't wake up and participate. Rachel interrupted them, asking for a favor. As Bam remained unconscious, Rachel talked to Kun about how Bam had pursued her when she first mentioned her intention to climb the tower. She never imagined they would meet again, which is why she asked Kun to lie to Bam when he woke up, making him doubt whether he really saw Rachel. Rachel wanted to avoid problems between them, believing that they became burdens to each other when together. Kun thought Rachel was being selfish because Bam truly wanted to be with her. Meanwhile, Anik held the Black March and gave it to Shibisu, telling him to communicate with the sword because it didn't talk to women. Shibisu tried to talk to the sword, but it rejected him for not being handsome enough. It turned out the Black March only liked handsome men. Anik left with the sword, and as she did, Endorsi met her and continued with her condescending tone she had started at the crown game. Endorsi explained that the Black March belonged to Yuri, the only princess chosen in the last 500 years to receive one of the 13-month series swords. She warned Anik to reconsider keeping the sword, once again calling her an imposter. In another room, Kun pondered how he couldn't let Bam continue associating with Rachel. Just then, Bam woke up, and Kun told him he'd been sleeping for 5 days. Bam worried that he might have missed something important and jeopardized the team, but to his relief, they explained that there was a 3-day break for all the participants after the crown game incident. All was well. After the break, all the participants gathered in a large room to select their positions in their teams before moving on to the 4th test. Loro explained that tower battles are conducted in teams and these teams must have specific positions. There are 5 types of positions: fisherman for close combat, spearbearer for ranged attacks, lightbearer for strategy and information, scout for analyzing enemies, and wave controller for Shinsu control. Someone asked if the injured participants would be disqualified, and Loro mentioned they would be if they couldn't participate, referring to Bam. Loro suggested he fit the wave controller position, but the instructor for that role, Yuga, wouldn't arrive for 2 more days, so there was time for Bam to recover. 2 days later, Bam woke up, and Kun informed him of the news. Kun also mentioned Rachel and made Bam believe the girl he saved was a stranger, which saddened him. Kun tried to cheer him up, saying that as Bam climbed the tower, he would eventually encounter Rachel. He gave Bam new clothes to replace the bloodstained ones from the previous battle. Bam changed into the new clothes and thought about going to Rachel's room, but before he knocked on the door, he decided to leave. After the events, Bam resumed his life at the tower and attended a class with other participants who were also being considered for the wave controller position in their teams. Master Yuga explained that Shinsu was a divine substance that controlled everything, and a contract had to be made on each floor with an administrator to use a fixed amount of Shinsu. Loroi was the only one among them who had already made such a contract while he was asleep. Yuga asked the others to activate their pockets invisible mode to receive the order to make a contract with an administrator. Bam did so and found himself transported into a dark realm where a giant snake accepted the contract because it sensed a unique scent on him. This left Bam completely exhausted while the others seemed unaffected. Later, Bam met Walryan, the masked girl whose eye he had damaged. He apologized to her, and she accepted his apology before leaving. Leroy and his teammate, Ho, then approached Bam. Ho kindly offered his help if Bam needed it, which Bam accepted, forming new friendships and acquaintances. Bam then returned to Kun, who informed him that Rak belonged to the spear-bearer position and was currently in his class for training. In that class, they had to throw a spear at an extremely distant target. One of Rachel's teammates was also in the same class, showcasing himself as a skilled spear-bearer and becoming Rak's competition. Following this, Shibisu and Hats approached Bam with a favor. They needed to make friends with Bam and Kun as part of an assignment. Bam and Kun agreed, and they all went to the cafeteria to eat together. Endorsi joined them, wondering how they could be friends when they were supposed to be enemies. Shibisu explained they needed to make at least 9 friends as part of a test. However, Endorsi didn't believe in friendships between men and women but still decided to join them. Anik arrived, no longer part of Shibisu's group, and commented on Endorsi's fall from grace due to her actions. Bam noticed the black march in Anik's hand and inquired if Anik and Endorsi were Yuri's sisters as fellow princesses of Zahard. Endorsi confirmed that they were chosen, not biologically related, but selected from the best families and races as trophies that Zahard flaunted. Endorsi then attended her class for those who qualified as fishermen, a class in which they accumulated points by not knocking down rivals, but their lives were at risk. She considered eliminating the others for more points, but Anik attacked her. Endorsi fought back, calling Anik weak for being nothing without the green April, but Anik pointed out that they were all imposters since there were no genuine Zahard princesses. In the Lightbearer class, Kun's task was to gather information. He discovered that Rak had qualified for the next test and tried to find information about Rachel and Bam, but the information he found was limited, raising suspicions. He also found information suggesting that Anik should be taking the tower test right now, but the data he had showed Anik is deceased. The battle between Anik and Endorsi continued, with both throwing participants into the abyss during their pursuit. Anik eventually caught up with Endorsi, but Endorsi halted her with a powerful strike. Endorsi demanded to know who Anik really was, and Anik revealed that she was the daughter of the true Anik, the authentic Zahard princess. Endorsi had realized this during the crown game, which was why she called Anik an imposter. However, Endorsi had stopped pursuing her because she became interested in someone else. Anik shared her past and her mother's tragic fate at the hands of the other Zahard princesses. This led to her desire to avenge her mother by eliminating all the Zahard princesses, starting with Endorsi. An explanation was given about Zahard, who was the first man to climb the tower, becoming the king who founded the kingdom. Women who received Zahard's favor automatically became his princesses. These princesses didn't have to be his daughters, they came from all over the tower. However, the price for the power they received was that they couldn't have relationships with men or have children to prevent the spread of the power given by Zahard. They were like pairs of shoes that no one could use, only admire. Some princesses chose not to obey this rule, like Anik's mother, who had a child and was eliminated by the other princesses because of it. This is why Anik wanted to avenge her mother from the other princesses. After this explanation, the battle between Anik and Endorsi continued. Endorsi dodged all of Anik's attacks and mentioned that Anik's mother had made a grave mistake because she couldn't propagate the power given to her. Anik became enraged and managed to get close enough to Endorsi to break her guard and push Endorsi off the edge, but Endorsi grabbed Anik and pulled her down as well, ending the tests. In the depths of the platform, both were still alive and started arguing. Endorsi asked Anik if her mother, who had treated her well after becoming a princess, ever regretted what she did. Anik told her no, remembering the moment when she said goodbye to her mother before her mother was killed. In Bam's class, they were casting some sort of spell using Shinsu as part of their training for the upcoming test selections. Ho, who had believed himself superior to Bam, noticed that he couldn't control his Shinsu while Bam continued to improve rapidly. Leroy had taught Bam how to control his Shinsu in return for a favor. Kun arrived and left with Bam, making Ho envious of Bam. Kun told Bam about the fight between Anik and Endorsi, who were both severely injured. Shibisu and Hats arrived, and Bam asked to help Shibisu because Bam considered him his friend. In the hospital, Endorsi had a broken leg and mentioned that she ran out of points due to medical expenses. Bam and Hats visited her, bringing her food but only giving it to her if she agreed to become friends with Hats and Shibisu on the condition that they would provide her with daily food. Endorsi accepted, and Bam and Hats tried to make a similar deal with Anik, who initially refused but was convinced with a chicken pie. Bam, Hats, Kun, and Shibisu celebrated the success of their plan. Later in Shinsu class, Ho was still envious of Bam's sudden improvements and suspected he might be hiding something. After their training, Ho received a letter with instructions on what he needed to do to reach the top of the tower. Luro had a meeting with Yuan, who told him he wouldn't be in charge of the next test and would be replaced by Quent. Luro accepted this decision even though he found it strange. Later, Luro gathered all the participants to explain the next test called the joint test, which involved a pursuit of tag. Rack and Rachel's partner wouldn't participate because they were the only ones who passed the previous test. The participants were divided into two teams, with Kun in Team A and Bam in Team B. The test involved two pursuers called it, one of them being Quent. The objective was to make their teams reach the end goal or steal Quent's insignia. The winning team would receive points, but they'd lose if Quent took their insignia. The participants were taken to the circular building where the test took place, and Kun acted as their leader, explaining his plan to lure Quent. They used Shibisu as bait and, while waiting, managed to attract Quent, who played along. Kun had Anik as their it, and she tried to steal Quent's insignia, but Quent dodged her ambush, making him quite angry. This is why Luro wanted to be in charge of this test, because Quent got angry and lost control. To Luro's surprise, Quent held back and gave the participants a 111-second head start before chasing them. Luro had doubts, but Yuan believed Kun had a more elaborate plan. In Team B, Bam was determined to find Rachel, who was using the name Michelle to hide her identity. Endorsi informed Bam that Rachel had already left, and when he asked why Endorsi chose her for their group, she explained it was the only option. Back in Team A, they continued running towards a bridge, hoping to win the test, knowing that Quent wouldn't make it easy for them. After finishing his count, Quent began chasing them. Kun organized the team, with Anik getting into an elevator and needing 10 minutes to reach the bridge. The rest of the team had to keep Quent occupied for at least 5 minutes. As Quent began climbing the stairs, the team set up an ambush. Quent understood the plan and decided to teach them a lesson, using incredible speed and shadows to defeat the participants on the stairs within a minute. Anik exited the elevator and was escorted by her group. Quent caught up to her quickly as the others had been defeated. Shibisu suggested waking up Loroi to help them but doubted Loroi would assist since he had practically passed the test already. Loroi observed the situation and assumed they had already lost because Quent was getting closer to Anik. Knowing which exit they were headed to, Rack warned Luro not to underestimate Kun. Luro considered the possibility that Kun had copied the insignia with his briefcase to confuse Quent. However, Yuan explained that the insignias were modified with Shinsu and couldn't be copied. Shibisu and two others tried to stop Quent but were easily defeated. Quent reached the bridge where Anik was headed but encountered Kun. Kun asked about Anik and told him she had jumped to the lower exit. However, Quent didn't believe him. Kun claimed that Anik was running towards the exit to deceive Quent. Anik hid inside a blue cube called the lighthouse controlled by Kun, trying to trick Quent into jumping off the bridge. Quent realized Kun was hiding something, so he decided to jump off the bridge while holding on to Kun. As they fell, he released his grip, allowing Anik's sword to save him. Quent fell to the ground alone, and Anik climbed back onto the bridge close to the finish line. Bam watched with his team, feeling excited about Kun's apparent victory. However, the rest of his team looked at him strangely because Team B couldn't pass if Team A won. Bam was just excited for his friends. Anik was about to cross the finish line, but to her surprise, Quent was waiting there and swiftly grabbed her insignia, declaring Team A as the loser. Team B celebrated because now they had a chance to take the test. In another room, Kun pretended to apologize to his team for not being a good leader, But it was all part of a plan to save Bam from disqualification. During the test, with Loro's help, Kun had gone to find Quant and help him climb up the bridge again to catch up with Anik. Meanwhile, in Team B, the members argued about who should be the leader, and Dorsey volunteered and was accepted as the leader. So Team B attempted a strategy similar to Team A, moving the insignia toward the bridge. Dorsey, Bam, and two others took the elevator while Hats and a couple of spearbearers took the stairs. Serena and Ho waited at the entrance. Serena shared her loss of motivation with Ho, explaining that in the next test, they might have to fight and even harm the people they had come to consider as friends. She recalled a story of how she and her friends were thieves and a ranker had come and killed them. Ho had saved her and brought her to the tower. She admitted that at first, killing didn't bother her, but now she was uncertain about it because of the connections she had formed. Ho, on the other hand, didn't care and showed that he was willing to step on others to advance further. Hats became alert as he sensed Quant approaching. He got ready and instructed the other spearbearers to prepare as well. When Dorsey and the others reached the bridge, she suddenly betrayed her teammates by attacking the two who weren't Bam. Dorsey shared her painful past with Bam and the group, describing how she came from a family that made adopted girls fight to become a princess of Zahard. She revealed that she had to endure a life of hardship, watching the other girls eat well while she had to eat stale bread. Eventually, she fought and defeated all the other adopted sisters to become a princess candidate. Dorsey expressed her desire to eliminate some members from Team B as only 4 could pass the test, and there were currently 6 in the group. She was determined to secure her passage to the next stage of the tower's trials. She told Bam that he would have to make tough choices too if he wanted to climb with Rachel. Bam struggled to understand this logic. In the meantime, Hats prepared an ambush with the 2 spearbearers, intending to take advantage of Quant's arrival. Quant arrived somewhat irritated about having to accept Kun's help from the previous game. On the other hand, Ho left Serena alone as he was beginning to act on his own accord. Back with Dorsey, she continued to fight against the 2 participants she aimed to defeat. Bam tried to reason with her, reminding her of her own past when she was weak. But when she let her guard down, one of the participants attacked her. Bam stepped in to protect Dorsey, but then he decided to find Rachel on his own. Rachel was in her lighthouse when Ho interrupted her. He took her hostage, knowing that he could use her to manipulate Bam. He claimed he had received a mysterious letter instructing him to do this. The test transmission was temporarily stopped to prevent the other team from witnessing these events. Loro wanted to interrupt the test, but Yuan insisted on continuing. Hats fought Quant to buy some time but was clearly outmatched. He had hoped the spearbearers would ambush Quant, but they betrayed him, fleeing and leaving him to fend for himself. Quant realized this betrayal and decided to confront the traitors. Ho, holding Rachel hostage, panicked as he noticed Bam approaching. Ho demanded that Bam fight Quant to save Rachel's life. Bam, driven by his love for Rachel, agreed without hesitation. Quant used Shinsu to immobilize Bam as he was more interested in pursuing it for the test. In his desperation, Ho ended up stabbing Rachel. Bam managed to use the same immobilization technique he learned from Quant, incapacitating Ho. As Ho lay on the ground, he revealed his envy and explained how his own weakness had prevented him from protecting anyone in his village. He admitted that he didn't actually want to harm Rachel but had targeted Bam out of resentment. Then, Ho tragically took his own life. Serena arrived at the scene to find Ho already dead, and Quant approached them to inform them that the test must continue. Bam couldn't believe he had lost his friend Ho and was deeply concerned for Rachel. Dorsey also arrived to engage Quant in a battle that she ultimately won by tricking him into believing he had stolen her badge when, in fact, she had taken his. From the control room, Yuan declared the test over, with Team B emerging as the winners. The next day, Rack tried to explain how Rachel's companion vanished and asked Dorsey about him. Dorsey said she didn't know him well because he was always quiet, and when she found him, he was already with Rachel. Kun returned to his room, thinking about the fact that only 2 wave controllers would pass the test, referring to Bam's position. He realized that Loroi would likely qualify and that everything he did was to ensure Bam earned enough points to pass. This included convincing Leroy to help with his plan and swapping the original letter that Ho received with a different one. A bit later, while Kun was resting in his room, he was interrupted by Rak, who called him to the door. Kun opened it and found a miniature Rak teasing him. Rak explained that it was Yuan's fault as he had bumped into him in the corridors and called him a tiny dwarf, but by the time he realized who he was, Rak had become the dwarf. Rak asked for help to grow back using Kun's magical briefcase, but Kun told him it didn't have that function. Rak then went to annoy Bam, but Kun advised against it as he sensed that Bam had no intention of continuing to climb the tower. Bam's sole motivation had been Rachel, and now that she was in a coma, he might stay with her. Rak didn't care and said he would drag Bam along if needed, asking Kun if he wanted Bam to stay stuck there. Kun admitted he couldn't do anything, but Rak insisted that he could. As Rak was about to leave, Bam appeared and informed them that Rachel could no longer walk due to her wound. He had decided to continue climbing the tower and be Rachel's legs. Bam didn't care about reaching the tower's summit or the stars, he just wanted to help Rachel. Hearing this, Kun remembered his own relationship with Maria and reflected on what might have happened if he had abandoned his goals back then. Bam asked for their help, and Kun pushed Rak aside, telling Bam to count on him. Kun was proud of his clever and cunning tricks and promised to help Bam reach the top. Bam then requested a favor to say goodbye to Ho in a kind of funeral. Serena, who had been close to Ho, arrived, as did Shibisu and the others who considered Ho a friend. Quant and Luro also joined, and a small ceremony was held with a toast. Later, Bam was with Rachel, thanking her for attending the funeral despite Ho's actions. Rachel began to cry and confessed that she had abandoned Bam because she wanted to see the stars and considered his weakness a nuisance. She told Bam she was no longer the Rachel he loved and said he could abandon her if he wanted. Bam remembered her as the light in his life, the person who saved him from his dark world. He explained that now he had many friends, but she was the first person he had ever met and was irreplaceable to him. Rachel apologized for everything and cried. During the night, Serena left the tower without saying goodbye to anyone. Shibisu had anticipated her departure and waited at the exit to bid her farewell. Serena asked him not to meet the same fate as Ho and gave him the dagger she had used. In another scene, Master Yuhan Sung secretly talked to someone, mentioning that they would soon retrieve the Black March and the Green April. However, he was interrupted by Yuan, who discovered his true identity as Ren, the 67th agent of Zahard's Royal Enforcement Division. Yuan offered to help Ren complete his mission as he considered Anik a threat to the tower's rules. Meanwhile, Kun met with Luro and informed him about the letter given to Ho. He explained that the letter was delivered before the teams were formed, indicating that the sender knew the participants' positions, specifically that Bam and Rachel were on the same team. This meant the source of the letter was likely one of the test organizers. Later, Luro sought out Yuan to announce the successful participants. In a subsequent room, they announced the passing candidates by class: fishermen, spearbearers, scouts, and wave controllers who had qualified. Rachel was also listed as a light bearer, but due to her injuries, she was disqualified. When one participant complained about the results, Yuan subjected him to a pain tolerance test. Kun, who was bold and confident, expressed his dissatisfaction and was called forward. He asked for Rachel to participate in the final test, but Yuan explained that due to her condition, it was impossible. Bam decided to speak up, revealing himself as an irregular. Yuan asked Bam to accompany him somewhere while the others debated their decision to collaborate with Bam. Bam was escorted by Yuan, and the majority chose to help Bam as they waited for his return. Bam stood before the administrator and requested permission for Rachel to continue participating in the tests. As Bam and Rachel entered the Shinsu bubble, they knew that they were the prey in the underwater hunt test. The others had become hunters. Net dolphins, which looked like seals, would fish once a day for their queen by creating a Shinsu net. Bam and Rachel's bubble had to be caught in this net and then spat out by the queen, which would mean they passed the test. The hunter's task was to protect the fish collected by the net dolphins from goblins, who use worm-like creatures as vacuum cleaners. Allowing the goblins to steal the fish would fail the test. Striped pig-like creatures in the area could scare away the goblins, but participants had to keep them near the net dolphins or use them to distract the goblins. Lastly, a terrifying monster known as the bull roamed the area, and they had to avoid it at all costs. The test began with Bam and Rachel inside the Shinsu bubble. The seals entered the water while Hatz's group watched over the goblins. Rack and the spear-bearer group waited above, ready to join the fight when needed. Shibisu's group guarded against the pigs and observed from the lighthouse. Ho's group, which was getting closer to Bam, also started to move. Talked to Rachel about Yuri, mentioning that she was the princess who lent him the sword. Hatz informed that his companions had disappeared. Shibisu found himself facing the bull, which was devouring a participant. He tried to get its attention, but it wasn't easy. Eventually, he jumped onto the bull with Serena's dagger, trying to attack it, but it was futile. Anik arrived to fight the bull, and Endorsi also joined the fight. They made a bet. If Anik defeated the bull, Endorsi would become her servant for life. If she lost, Anik would surrender the Green April to Endorsi. Simultaneously, Rack received a message from Hatz about the goblins' movement. There were more goblins than expected. Yuan instructed Hatz to find out their destination, and Rack's spear-bearer group prepared for a surprise attack. In the Shinsu bubble, the net dolphins were forming their net. Unable to see the depths, they relied on Ner, who was on the surface with Leroy. Ner controlled divine fish with Shinsu to help locate an underground path. Endorsi continued her battle with the bull but hadn't defeated it yet, and her turn was almost up. The monster captured her, but she managed to break free. The bull let out a loud scream and fled. Anik kept searching for the bull and came across Ren. Anik tried to ignore Ren, but when he mentioned her mother and showed her mother's necklace, she stopped. Ren introduced himself and admitted to being the one who killed her mother, shocking Anik. Meanwhile, the goblins continued advancing. Rack asked if they could attack but stopped him. He had another plan thanks to Nur's abilities. Anik attacked Ren to take the necklace back, but Ren defended himself and wounded Anik, stabbing her through the abdomen. Then, Ren took the Green April and handed it to Endorsi, telling her to clap the imposter Anik and redeem herself. This specific test was designed to eliminate Anik, since her birth went against the tower's rules. Endorsi was given the Green April to carry out this task. As Hatz tried to remain hidden from the goblins, he and one of the spear-bearers were discovered, causing their plans to go awry. Endorsi approached Anik, not to finish her off but to return the Green April and receive the Black March. They planned to confront Ren together. Meanwhile, Shibisu continued to search for the princesses and, while shouting, encountered Yuri. Rack grew tired of fleeing from the goblins, so he decided to confront them back-to-back with the princesses. They managed to subdue Ren. However, when Endorsi lowered her guard, Ren attacked her and then Anik, leaving Anik wounded. Yuri arrived at the scene, surprising Ren. Ren introduced himself, and Yuri saw her sword on the ground and decided to take the job of recovering the swords into her own hands. Back with Rack, he and the other spear-bearers got surrounded by multiple goblins. Leroy used his powers to make his companions float in the air to protect them. Goblins were now fighting against pigs led by Ner. Leroy and everyone thanked him, who decided to take a break. Suddenly, someone very similar to Hatchin appeared. He was Kay's relative and he had been accompanying Yuri on her journey, along with Evan and Curtin. Meanwhile, Yuan watched the tests with Luro, Aro, and Quint and realized there was an infiltrator. When they tried to identify the infiltrator, the signal was cut by Hatchin. Luro Aro found Yuan suspicious for staying calm during this situation. Hatchin spoke with Kay, but Kay wasn't particularly interested in what he had to say. Puling offered to take Kun to see Princess Maria, but Kay declined the offer. Evan and Curtin rushed to find Yuri. Even though she wasn't in trouble, they needed to be by her side. On the way, they were interrupted by Yuan, who invited them for coffee and raised several questions. However, Evan got straight to the point and told Yuan they were there to retrieve the Black March. Yuan understood and maintained a neutral stance. Meanwhile, Yuri effortlessly defeated Ren. Just as she was about to kill him, Evan communicated with her through his pocket, telling her she couldn't help Anik. Yuri stepped away from Ren, and Curtin eliminated him as he rejected an offer to see Maria. Hats tried to help him fight Hatchin, but Hatchin dodged the attack and withdrew. Hats sensed that something bad was happening, as Kei usually didn't rest when his friends were in danger. Ren lay crushed while Yuri managed to recover the Black March. Ren told Yuri that what she was really looking for was Bam, who had been targeted by the bull. Bam was talking to Rachel, mentioning that he was no longer the same because he had friends now and could control Shinsu to some extent. Suddenly, the bull arrived and started attacking him. Yuri wanted to interfere, but Anik and others urged her not to, as it would disqualify Bam. They decided to trust Bam to pass the test. Bam was struggling against the bull, getting injured multiple times. He eventually freed himself by exploding the monster from the inside using his Shinsu, emitting a radiant light. After defeating the bull, Bam fell into Rachel's arms. Yuri trusted Bam's friends, so she took the green April and left a message for Bam with Shibisu, asking him to tell Bam that she would be waiting on the 77th floor. She then left with Evan. Evan encountered Wa Ryan, who turned out to be a guide as well. He didn't understand why she was in that place. Returning to Bam and Rachel, they were about to be swallowed by the Queen of the Net Dolphins. Bam believed they would pass the test and could climb the tower together. Rachel asked to hold his hand, but then she surprisingly pushed him out of the Shinsu bubble, sending him falling into the deep abyss. Bam was left in shock as he watched Rachel distance herself and sink deeper into the depths. Rachel appeared strangely calm after betraying her best friend. We got to see a memory of how she came to the tower in the first place. She wasn't the chosen one. Bam was. Head On, the guardian of the first floor, showed Rachel an awakening of a savior, making it clear that Bam was the person they were waiting for. Rachel begged to climb the tower and said she'd do anything. Head On agreed to give her a chance, but with a test. She had to stop Bam herself. In other words, she had to clap him. Rachel accepted but said she was too weak. So, Head On offered her a powerful guardian to fight on her behalf and even to bring her back to life once if needed. This guardian was the same companion she had when she met in Dorsey. The companion gave up his life to bring Rachel back, and that's how Rachel managed to catch up to Bam and try to clap him. As time went on, Rachel's envy and hatred for Bam grew. She was frustrated by his growing circle of friends and the attention he received. While Ryan and a ranker helped Rachel in a plan to get her closer to Bam. Rachel's plan worked, and she was alone with Bam again, aiming to end him once and for all. In the end, Rachel betrayed Bam and pushed him out of the Shinsu bubble. After this, Rachel lied to the others, saying that Bam couldn't survive the attack from the bull. Later, Luro gathered the participants and informed them that Bam's body couldn't be found, suggesting the fish may have eaten him. The test was over, and everyone had passed. Bam's friends, except Rachel, vowed to fulfill their promise to take Rachel to the top of the tower to see the stars. Hats had suspicions about Rachel but pretended to go along with the plan. Luro decided to resign and invited Quant to investigate the matter by climbing the tower further. Meanwhile, Yuan took the remaining participants to continue their tests in a different location. Bam was revealed to be alive and was found by Wa Ryan. He woke up and wanted to know why Rachel tried to harm him. Wa Ryan told him he had to climb the tower again to find the answers to everything. She offered to help him train. Several years passed, and we saw the adult Bam with his back to us, continuing his journey to climb the tower.